Jensen, and I'm the principal of the Silwood School of Cookery in Cape Town. Today's little masterclass is going to show you how to make meringues as the first year students learn to do it at the cookery school. I've got a little bit of an interesting piece of equipment here, and once the students have seen how this operates, they get a very good understanding of the whisking of egg whites. This is a traditional copper bowl, and it's the sort of equipment that was used before stainless steel and before porcelain and before Pyrex. It has a very special reaction on egg white, and we don't need to use an acid stabilizer when we whip up the egg whites to make a good meringue. The only disadvantage of using copper is that when it's exposed to the air, verdigris forms, and verdigris is not really something that anybody should eat. So every time a bowl like this is used, it needs to be cleaned very carefully, and we clean our bowls with a cut lemon and a little bit of salt. And I can show you on the outside, the bowl already is perfectly clean and shiny on the inside. But if you look at the outside, which you don't need to really bother about, the copper is dull and it needs to be cleaned off. And just a little bit of acid and a little bit of salt and a good amount of elbow grease removes that deposit, and then with a good wash of soap and water so that there's no acid left at all, you have a lovely, clean, shiny, safe to use bowl. Right, Swiss meringue is the most basic and the least stable of the meringues, but it is the easiest to make. All you need to remember is that the amount of sugar that you use in the meringue must be equal to double the weight of the egg white that you use. The egg whites must be at room temperature. If they're not at room temperature, they don't whisk to their full volume. I'm going to be using caster sugar because it's nice and fine. You can also use icing sugar, and you can also use granulated sugar. The first thing you do is you weigh off your egg whites. And you take that weight, that weighs 30 grams, and you double it, and then you weigh off double the amount of the whites in caster sugar, without any addition of any acid or anything, because the ions in the copper sort of work a little magic. Put the egg white into the copper bowl, and then using a balloon whisk, and in an ideal world, the balloon whisk's width, if you look down at it into the bowl, should cover the base of the bowl. I only have this kind of whisk because they're not very easy to get hold of in South Africa, but it will do its job quite well. Now the first thing I've got to do is whisk up the egg white until it forms a stable firm that is stiff and firm enough to hold the sugar. Now you will notice first as you whisk, the egg white's cohesion is broken, and as you continue whisking, tiny little particles of air are absorbed and trapped in the egg white. Let's have a look and see. Can you see that turns over? Not quite stiff enough yet, so I must continue. And doing this by hand teaches you to be able to recognize each of the stages that you need to get to in your whipping of your egg whites so that your meringue forms easily. Let's have a look. Can you see that little point stands up straight? And that's the indication that I'm almost firm enough in egg white firm to be able to add the sugar. There we have a nice firm peak. And at this stage, I can take small portions of the sugar, a teaspoon at a time, and whisk them in. Now, if you whisk the egg white and you try to add in your sugar, you will find that your mixture goes runny. And there's not much you can do by hand. You don't seem to have the hand power to get it back without starting all over again. Right, I've now got a nice stable foam without the addition of any acid. And I can simply take the balance of the sugar and fold it in to the stable meringue base. And I have my basic Swiss meringue, as opposed to using a machine, where we simply place the room temperature egg whites into the bowl. We whisk them up to a firm peak in exactly the same way as we do it by hand. And then we whisk in all the rest of the sugar gradually until we land up again with an equally firm, stable meringue foam. Now, when we bake our meringues, we like to use a silicone pad or silicone paper. Greaseproof paper is not a good idea because you'll find that the meringue is inclined to actually stick fast to the greaseproof paper, and you then have to almost scrape your meringue off the paper. If you use silicone, you'll find that it is nice and non-stick. You don't need to use a piping bag and nozzle to shape your meringue. You can simply use 2 similar sized spoons, but using a piping bag and a plain or a decorative nozzle is quite fun. I'll just make a few little piped meringues just coming upwards, or you can use a spiral motion. Right, now the baking of the meringues is most important. You don't want to put them into an oven that is too cold, that they don't set straight away, and you don't want to put them into an oven that is too hot, so that they caramelize on the outside without drying out completely. Right, into a preheated oven of 120 degrees Celsius. And once you've let your meringues bake for about 25 minutes to half an hour, you can turn your oven down to 100 degrees or just below and leave them to dry out completely. And you'll find once they're dried out completely, they lift very, very easily off the silicone mat or the silicone paper. And once they're cooled down, they firm up, and you can store them for almost as long as you want, in a completely airtight container. Now, your watch points are very important. Your egg whites must be at room temperature, preferably not absolutely new laid egg whites, a couple of days old. Egg whites need to be weighed so that you can work out your sugar quantity, and just simply take double the weight of the sugar of the egg white in sugar, and that's it. If you wish, you can add a little vanilla, or you can even add a little bit of lemon juice, but if you're using a copper bowl, you never add anything, because it's the acid that keeps your copper bowl nice and clean and shiny. And if you use that when you're making meringues, you'll find that the copper lands up in the meringue instead of just the irons working their magic. Simple little recipe, and this is what the first years learn to do, so that they're able to work out and see all the different stages of whisking an egg white before they make their meringues.